Hey, family, it's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors and offering trauma healing trainings across the country. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today I'm welcoming to the show a brother of mine, a brother from another mother, as I'll say, who I've had the pleasure of working with through the work we're doing in the community around social justice. But when I heard his story, I was like, man, we have to have you on the show. And you're going to hear about his testimony in just a minute, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about his background. Reverend Bryant Warren is a dedicated father and CEO of the Victory Community Coalition, which advocates fervently for justice and thriving communities. As the director of social justice and outreach at Victory Apostolic Church in the Chicagoland area, he collaborates on vital initiatives, drawing from his two-decade background in education and military service. He's guided by his deep commitment to service and faith and feels a deep calling to echo Jesus' mission, proclaim the good news, freedom, recovery, and liberation. And he is here with us today. Thank you so much, Bryant, for joining me.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for inviting me to be on. I'm excited to be on stage with you today.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, after our conversation, you kind of called me out, but they're going to learn a little bit more about that. You called me out about the show topic because we, oftentimes focus on women. We have more women guests on the show than men, but men hurt too. Men struggle with certain issues as well. And you have a testimony to share. And so I would love for you to start off with your story, which is kind of bringing you to the show today.
Sure. I'm here today because I want to share my story of loss. We talk a lot about widows, but there are lots of men who are have experienced being a widower, in which I did. So I'm going to go back just a little bit. In 2007, I was living in Ohio and had an opportunity to relocate back to Chicago. And at the time, Jocelyn, you're a little younger than I am, but back in the day, we used to have blackpeoplemeet.com. That's how I did my dating back then because I was always on the road. And as I was offered a job in back in Chicago, that night I changed my location from Ohio back to Chicago. And that night, a young lady, her name was Sheena Glover, uh, reached out to me, and we started dating in 2007, and then in September of 2009, we actually got married. So we married in 2009, and as you know, Jocelyn, you are a newlywed, and it's probably different from you, but that first year can be rough of adjustment. And so we were in our first year of marriage, adjusting. She in that first year, 2010, she was diagnosed with breast cancer in the fall of 2010. So we got through that, and then at the same time, though she was going through had a breast cancer diagnosis, one of the things that she wanted more than anything was that she wanted to be a mother. And so her fear was that if she went through the chemotherapy and all of the rigmarole of the chemicals of treating her breast cancer, that she would no longer be able to have a baby. And so we had a conversation, and she said to me, she said, Bryant, I'd rather risk my life to be a mother than to never be a mother at all. And so in November of 2010, actually, we were Thanksgiving. We were in her hometown of Mississippi. We were actually out because we had my oldest daughter from a previous relationship with me. We're out seeing Rapunzel. I think that's Rapunzel, the one with the long hair. It was a Disney we were seeing. And she said, your popcorn is making me sick on the stomach. I said, really? So we went to Walmart in Jackson, Mississippi, and she got a pregnancy test, and she found out that she was pregnant. And so we were really excited about it. And then God just seemed like it was just blessing that year. I got my dream job that year. We ended up moving. She got a dream job working in higher ed. We moved into our dream home. Everything was going great. In April, which would have been her 38th birthday, she decided, she said, I want one more time. Every year she would go to Panama City, Florida for the smooth jazz concert. And she said, I want to go there one more year and just enjoy this because once I'm a mother, I'm not going to be able to do that. And she asked me to go with her, but I couldn't go because I was working. And I just started this new job. I said, baby, I can't go with you. Take your girlfriends with you. I'm not going to be able to make it. And so she was in Panama City, Florida. It was on the. I remember when she left out that morning. That morning she left out at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had a limo come and pick her up to take her to O'Hare. And I remember what she was wearing. She was wearing a green jumpsuit. She was a Delta. She had a red Delta shawl on. So she told me that she loved me and how she would miss me and that she would be back in 3 or 4 days, and that was the last time I saw her. That night, I was in Wisconsin at the time fighting a big union battle. She called me that night and she told me that she was experiencing some pain and a headache. And I said, so because she was a high risk pregnancy. That Friday before she left, she went to see her doctor. She told her she was a high risk pregnancy. He gave her blood pressure medication. And it was the first time I'd ever missed a doctor appointment because I was so sick. I was so sick I could not go to that doctor's appointment. And I wanted to go because I didn't believe that she should be on a plane with a high risk pregnancy, and she was 3 or 4 months pregnant. And she said, I'm going to ask the doctor about it. I don't really believe, she came back and said, did you ask the doctor? She said, oh, yeah, yeah. He said it was okay. And I don't know if I think she really wanted to go on that trip one last time with her girlfriends. And so I asked her, I said, did you have your medication with you? She said, no, I left my medication at home. She said, because I'm only going to be gone 3 days. When I get back, I'll take the medication. And so it was probably close to 10 or 11 o'clock Wisconsin time. I went into my hotel to check in. I told her I love her. And probably 3 hours later, I was in the Holiday Inn Express in Wisconsin somewhere, and received a phone call from one of her girlfriends saying that they found Sheena, her name was Sheena, in the bathroom, and that the emergency room, they had to call an ambulance for her because she was unresponsive. So that was probably one of the toughest days of my life because here I am in Podunk, Wisconsin, someplace, and my wife and unborn son was in Panama City, Florida. So somehow or another, I don't know how I did it, but somehow I got the strength to drive myself from Wisconsin back to my home, and then find a flight to Florida and connect there. So it probably was a 24-hour. It was 18 hours. I know it was 18 hours from the time I received the phone call to the time that I was at the hospital. And by the time I got there, my son Elias had been born, but he only lived for 3 hours because it was in Panama City, Florida. They didn't have, if he was at Northwestern, perhaps they would have had the medical technology to save him, but they didn't have breathing tubes large enough for him, or small enough for him. And within 12 hours after that, we had to make a determination to pull her off of life support because she had had an aneurysm. And so I did get to hold my son, Elias. I was really excited. I always wanted a son. And so I remember walking around and calling her when we were at home, I would say, Elias. I wanted him to hear my voice and know my voice. And I'm a big Lion King fan. And so I always imagined I sounded like Mufasa to him.
Mufasa, yeah.
Right, right, right. So I didn't get to but I did get to hold him, and I got to hear his story for 3 hours. The nurses were coming in the room and they were talking about how great of a kid he was, and they got to hold him and they were there with him. So he was surrounded by love, and I'm proud of him because he was a ladies' man because the ladies in the hospital were loving him. So uh, it
Oh, wow,
was
Brian.
it was an interesting experience, but at the same time, you have this adrenaline because you're just trying to go. It's not until you're alone that the impact of what has happened takes place.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because I these are 2 losses at one time.
Correct.
And for you, you said when you got home, it began to really sink in, but was it right away, Brian? Did you run from that pain?
What? So it's not right away. My story is a little strange. So because I was in Panama City, Florida already, and she was from Mississippi. Her family wanted to have the funeral there. So what's so this is how God works, and there's mercy. So I'm in Panama City, Florida, by myself. What do I do with two bodies? It turns out my mom is originally from Panama City, Florida. She hadn't been there since she was 3 or 4 years old. But my mom was able to reach out to some people in Panama City, Florida, and connect with the funeral home. And it's down south hospitality. They took care of me and my family. Some of her family came in town. And so I then drove their cremated ashes to from Panama City to Mississippi. So it was like this another 12 hours or 8 hours that I'm by myself to kind of reflect of what's going on as well. And so what somebody said to me, it was a coworker. She called me, and I always remember she said, Bryant, have grace and mercy with yourself. Grace, and it was like at the time I didn't understand. I'm like, what do I need grace and mercy? I'm alive, but I needed to have that kind of grace and mercy on myself because I believe that one of the things that happens, especially as a person like myself who believes as a man I'm responsible for my family, that guilt that perhaps I wasn't there. I should have chosen to be with my wife rather than to be on the job, or I shouldn't have been so sick that I didn't make that doctor's appointment. I should have been there. So that is something that kind of guilt started to hit as well.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I appreciate you being authentic and honest about that guilt sometimes we carry, even though maybe logically we know it's not our fault, but something is still wrestling inside of us to say, "Could I've done something different?"
Over the 12 years, and I still from time to time wrestle with that, and so of where could I've been, and so being able to understand that I'm not in charge is probably nothing that I could do, and so some things that you have to give over to the hand of God, and so um, yeah, that is the story of what happened, and then from there the healing process needed to start. So
Yeah, let's talk about that healing journey. And I know it was a process, and I do want to just kind of share with the audience, even though they might pick up with this, is that Brian, you are a funny guy. You are hilarious sometimes, And when we're talking, I can see even now you make jokes when we're talking about something that's serious. And so I'm curious, did you try to use humor to not let people see like the pain that you were dealing with? Did you use it to encourage yourself?
yeah, I mean, probably, yeah, things that, you have to have some friends that you can say some things that the rest of the world will think is inappropriate at the time, in order to make it. And so, having humor, having close friends who, so, again, within, that's when, you love, so all this happened within, 2 or 3 days. And again, it's not, I'm from south side of Chicago. My family, my friends from around the country, they were in this small town in Mississippi. Because I say Jackson, Mississippi, but this place was actually probably 45 minutes in the beaten woods outside of Jackson, Mississippi. And my friends and family are there. And so being able to have some time where you can laugh and crack some jokes from time to time, and just allow yourself to be real, is really important. And I think that, especially as men, well, and I'll say this as a man, sometimes we're expected not to show our emotions, but there you need to have some people that you can cry. And so there were times that I broke down and I cried, and I needed to be around people who could understand that, and not allow myself to believe that I'm less than because I have those emotions.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because that's real, especially for men. It is a pressure not to cry. And so those tears need to flow sometimes. And for you in this healing process, you have family there. They came down to Mississippi in this little small town, but eventually family and friends start to go on with their life and you're left with this loss and you have to navigate this. So what was your journey like navigating? What helped you to get through?
Can I'll be really honest. I'm going to be very transparent. Um, Initially, it was Jack Daniels. When when everyone's gone, when I was gone. So I tried to go back to work right away. I had a great. I mean, God just. again, and I look back on God's grace because my job gave me so many days off from work, and then I wanted to get back to work. That's hey, let me get back to work. And my boss said, she said, Brian, I can't stop you from coming back to work. You can come back to work, but what I can do is take away every assignment that you have. So you can come to work, but you ain't gonna have nothing to do. So just you might as
I
well stay at
love
home.
your boss. That's amazing.
They made me so, and then I ended up getting short term disability. I think I was off work for at least 3 months. And I think I
Mm.
tried to come back. So what I did was I traveled the country doing work. So I remember trying to go to Atlanta for an event. I couldn't do it. Just getting back on the plane. I think even looking back on the trauma of traveling, because I remember being part of my journey to Florida from Wisconsin was a stop in Orlando, Florida's airport. I mean, that's the happiest airport in the world, right? Everybody's there for Disney. And I'm thinking, everybody's here so happy. They're going to Disney. I'm going to see my dead wife and my dead son. And even now, when I travel through that airport, I remember God's grace being there with me, and also remembering, help me to remember to be kind to people because you don't know what anybody's going through. As I sat there, I was like, nobody understands that I'm in pain right now. But going back to, I think that when I did not handle it well, Jocelyn. I didn't choose. I would love to say I got on my knees and I was praying to God, and Jesus and the Holy Spirit met me. I began to drink more. I was lived down in the boonies by myself, and so I went to the liquor store and I got Jack Daniels, and it brought me comfort. Watching TV, probably keeping company that I probably didn't need to keep because I was lonely. And so I think that that's when, especially with guys, one of the things that we do is that we seek the comfort of women when we are in pain at times. And so probably at times when I probably needed to have spent by myself, then I would probably seek the comfort of other women in order to ease that pain. So I'll be women and liquor. Those were women and whiskey were my tools of dealing with things initially. And as I started to heal up, and then within a year after that, because I had such anxiety, I couldn't do my job. I literally had such anxiety and fear. I would sit in my hotel room when I did start traveling for 2 or 3 days. Nobody knew where I was. And eventually I lost that job. And so it was during that time period that I was at my lowest. I didn't have a job. I lost my family. And it's the other thing I think for men that is difficult, and maybe it's similar for women. It wasn't just the loss of a wife and a son, it was the loss of my identity as a husband and a father. So for me, it was my role. It's not about the job. It's about what I do. So I am a husband. I am a father. And so though I was still a father because I have an older daughter, it was the loss of this son that was coming. And so it changed like who am I now? And so those are things that I had to wrestle with. And then after losing the job, and so when I lost the job in 2012, then I was comfortable. I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, and then that's when God said, "Are you willing to be obedient to me?" Because I knew I was called to ministry since 2002, but I was running from that. I didn't want to do it. I love doing my union work. I said, God, I'm out here striking for people. I'm fighting for people's money. This is Jesus' work. I'm turning over tables. I don't want to be in nobody's pulpit. And when I decided that I would be obedient to God and to follow my calling, that began the process of my healing journey.
Wow. Wow, so you accepted the call. Did that lead to you going to seminary school right away, Bryant?
That did. That's when I decided to go to McCormick. And so at the time, and this is the I'm telling these things I've never said to anyone before. Honestly, is that when I got to McCormick, I needed a place to live because I mean I lived out in the boonies. I didn't have a job at the time, and so here's McCormick. There's a seminary, and then they have housing, and I'm like, whoa. And so once I accepted that call, long story short, I told God I said, God, I need a job. Literally, before I get job out my mouth, I received a call from somebody in Michigan and asked if I would come work for them for 6 months as a temporary employee. And I said, sure, I'm coming down to get this job. And God said, nope, because you're starting seminary in 6 months. I called the lady back, and this is the one. This is when you just, because at that point you don't care. I told the lady, I said, I can't accept your job. She said, why? I said, because God told me. God told me I
Wow.
have to do what I have to do for, and I told her about my, she said, well, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't want to talk about the job. I want to hear about your call. So
Mm.
she said, I told her about my call. She said, well, school starts in 3 months. I said, right. She said, okay, come work for me for 3 months. I've been there for almost 11 years.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And you've been blessed to have some amazing employers, because even her just saying, "I'm not mad at what you said. I want to know more." She came from a place of curiosity and wanting to know you. And it sounds like she was able to work things out so it worked for you answering your call and doing the work for the job.
Absolutely. I was able to, work through seminary, my time in seminary in McCormick was rough because I wasn't healed. I wasn't able to focus. So I took some time out.
When I lost my father, the grief that I experienced was paralyzing. Even though I worked in the grief counseling field, I still needed the support of a counselor and a faith community to help me navigate my grief journey. Grief is an uninvited guest in all of our lives. Whether we are struggling with the loss of a relationship, our health, a pet, or the death of a loved one, the grief we feel can be extremely painful. In those moments, we must remember that grief is a valid, healthy response to our loss that needs to be expressed, not denied. But finding a safe space to do it is not easy. This is where Faith on the Journey counseling can help. We put together a free grief resource guide that provides several tools to help you process your grief in a healthy way. In addition, we can help connect you to a Christian grief counselor and plug you into a small group that will pray with you, encourage you, and help you get through this difficult time. We know how difficult this grief journey can be, but you don't have to carry the burden alone. Visit faithonthejourney.org/grief to access your free grief resource guide and connect with an incredible Christian community that will support you.
Bryant, I hear you saying that even though you were in seminary school and you were doing your best to move forward, it still was a struggle for you. And so I want to rewind and just ask the question around, what support did you tap into outside of your faith to really help you to move forward and begin to heal?
Besides having grace on myself, probably one of the most important tools was getting counseling. And I'm not talking about just going to your pastor. I'm talking about somebody who has been to school to see some psychological training to have, and some experience dealing with my issue. So after the death of my wife and son, I started seeing a counselor probably twice a week. Probably that first week we were doing double sessions at a time because I needed to be able to get it out and express what it was that I was feeling in a healthy way. And having the counselor help me to frame what was going on and see the reality of where I was. And it was probably through counseling that I was called out on my integrity, on my medicine, on my whiskey and women wasn't uh, going to be healthy for me, and it wasn't something that matched the integrity of someone who felt they were called to ministry. So I would say that to any brother out there, a sister out there, get the help that you need, and it's okay to go see your pastor and get the spiritual help too, but you need somebody who's got a certificate on their wall because they've had some training, they've got some master's degree or preferably a doctorate degree. And I also say, Jocelyn, I've not shared this, I was on medication. I was on antidepressants as well for quite some time because I just couldn't function through the anxiety, and it was through the medication that I was at least able to kind of get myself going. And then I came back. And when I came back, during that time period, that when I took off, I got married.
You can't just
And
drop that into the story without giving, like, the background. Rewind, okay, let's run that back. So, how did you meet your beautiful wife?
so this is strange. My wife, Takara Warren, is actually the daughter of my pastor. And so and I mean, I know I'm not making this stuff up. This is where I just know that God is real. So I got to go back now. In 2009, April 2009, this is before I married Sheena, I visited Victory Apostolic Church in Madison. The only reason I visited Victory at that time was because I wanted to go to, there was a Cracker Barrel in Madison that I wanted to go eat at
I
after
know
church.
about that Cracker Barrel, yes.
Exactly. And so I was going out there. So Sheena and I went out there to visit. We were dating at the time, and they had just moved into the current facility. And Pastor got up and he started talking about how he wanted to get involved in that community. God told me in spring of 2009 that I would be working in this church, helping to um, bring the community more, help organize the community and do social justice in this community. And my mind was like, I met the pastor maybe once. I don't know these people. I'm traveling the country doing my work. And then I remember she even said to me, she said, Brian, you know what? You should join this church. I said, why? She said, this is the first time I've seen you stay awake for an entire sermon. So, after, I joined Victory. And as I started getting involved in the ministry, there was a single parent ministry in which Takara was a member of as well. And we started to, I started trying, it's the pastor's daughter. And someone told me that I can't get with the pastor's daughter. And, I don't like being challenged, So I said, whoa, wait a minute. What you mean I can't get with the pastor's daughter? So, started flirting with her and everything. I always tell brothers, another thing I tell brothers, I said, just because you get saved in the church, don't forget your game. You know,
Ooh, don't lose the
sisters,
game.
don't
You
forget
was
the game.
shopping
Brothers
at
want
the
to walk.
church.
Right, sisters don't want you walking up to them talking about praise the Lord, you looking blessed and highly favored. I told her I thought she looked good and I wanted to take her out. And so
Okay.
we did start dating, and Pastor obviously approved of me, and so we got married in January of 2018. And so she had my daughter's now 18, my daughter's 23, so we are a blended family. But they're both really out the house now, so we're enjoying life right now. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And when you think about the day you said "I do" to your beautiful wife, did you think that you would get to that place again? Did you think that you would marry again after your first loss?
oh, I did.
Mm,
I did.
mhm.
And that's the thing, again, under probably maybe some stereotypes, but brothers, the Bible talks about brothers need. I like, I wanted to have a woman in my life. I did not want to be by myself. I'm still young. And so I never, God talks about it's not good for man to be alone. I knew it wasn't good for Brian to be alone. And I told you that whiskey and women were my medicine of choice. And so I needed to, if I was, and I knew that if I wanted to be a minister guy, I never wanted to be a bootleg preacher who was known as a womanizer. And I wanted to be a man of one wife who was faithful and known for that. And so that was really important to me. So that is what I've strived to be, is to be a faithful husband and a good father first before my ministry.
That's amazing, Bryant, and I'm so glad that you found love again, and you have your ministry, and you're working with her, doing great work at Victory, which I've had the opportunity to witness, and as we celebrate this moment of how God has just unfolded Himself to you in this way, I do want us to also speak to someone who might be going through what you went through several years ago, who's in it and grieving, and I would love for you to just offer some words of wisdom, of compassion to them.
Grace, patience, and forgiveness. Allow yourself to go through the process. As I look back on my time period, there are things that I wish I'd done differently, and I talked about some of the mistakes I made as far as how I dealt with my pain, but that was my pain and how I dealt with it at the time, and the grief that I was dealing with. Allow yourself to grieve, Allow yourself the space, allow yourself the grace to do so. Don't rush to make any quick decisions. And that's one of the things. I made some decisions that were way too quick, and I would not make any major decisions during this time of grief. So give yourself the space to grieve. I'm not even going to say you need to run around and run to the altar. I'm not going to be, because this is a natural thing. And so give yourself the space for grace. Surround yourself around people who love you. Allow God to work you through the process, because it's a process. And so you want to get to the healing process, but you're gonna have to go through the messy piece. You're gonna go through the medication, the surgery, the healing process to get to where God has for you. And so this is what I will say. One of the things that I always wonder was why. And I don't know the why, but I do know the what. I know that despite what I went through and that pain and the loss that I have, God has still utilized my life in order to be a blessing and to fulfill my purpose. So, and it doesn't, and just because I've been married, you never replace them. Sheena, just because I'm married, Sheena and Elias are not replaced. Those are still people who I miss to this day. I will always reflect on. I will never ever totally get over that. And I'm grateful that I have a wife who understands that. So she's not guilty, feeling, upset or jealous if I bring them up, or because I have mementos of them in my office at all, because she understands that it was a loss that I had unexpectedly, and it's something I'll never get over.
I appreciate that, Bryant. And I thank you for being just so real and honest about your story. I know it encouraged someone today, and I'm honored that you shared it on this show. And so thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Bryant. And thank you all for tuning into today's episode of Faith on the Journey. Oh, I was so blessed by his testimony, and I hope you were too. And if you were, you know what to do. Please share this episode with a friend. Let's get this out to the world. There are people who are hurting right now as this show drops around the holiday. Also, if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a 5-star review. Let's help to make sure that people know how amazing this show is, because people need hope, people need encouragement, people need faith. And so I thank you for your support. If you're looking for some grief counseling resources, please visit us online at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. That's it for this time. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, you stay encouraged and you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you.